don't be afraid to make a mistake. I think a lot of the younger generation are afraid to make a mistake, and we worry about the repercussions of that. All mistakes can be fixed. And as a parting comment, I'll say this. If you feel you have a challenge, if you feel you're anxious, or you have a lisp or a stutter, or you might not like the way you look or sound, or whatever it is, find what your superpower is. Every single human on this earth has a superpower. And once we understand what ours is, and we find time to nurture it and embrace it, and that means accepting ourselves for who we are, because when we accept ourselves for who we are, others will want to listen to what we have to say. And when you can find your challenge and develop it into a superpower, it's transformational, and it'll change the way you see the world.
In 1837, Horace Mann created the education system, a system at the time designed to pump out factory workers and professors. The same system that is still being used today in the 21st century. Now, Mann's system is backfiring. We are being moulded by the same industrial system that has existed for close to 200 years. That system delivers us into a digital economy that has no need of our outdated skills. This isn't our teachers' fault. This isn't the government's fault. This is due to a rapidly changing world full of technology and unforeseen circumstances. And us Gen Zs are caught in the middle. Welcome to the Driven Young podcast, the podcast for stressed, overwhelmed young Australians, teaching you practical life skills you can implement now to set yourself up in life. And now your host, Byron Dempsey.
Welcome back to the Driven Young podcast, and today I'm joined by public speaking coach Shil Shanghavi, a public speaking coach with a stutter. Shil is a Perth-based speaker coach, speaker, MC, and storyteller. He is also the first speaker coach in Perth to introduce virtual reality as a groundbreaking tool to develop your presentation skills. Public speaking has always been Shil's greatest fear, so he knows exactly what it feels like when your body goes numb, your heart starts racing, and your mind goes into overdrive. Despite living with a stutter, Shil trained himself to become a professional speaker and develop an intimate understanding of how to harness and control the fear of speaking. In this episode, we talk about why communication skills are so important, how to start developing these skills, the importance of the little things, first impressions, and the 3 ways we communicate as human beings. A shout out to Student Edge for sponsoring this episode. Shil has a course on Student Edge Plus, where he breaks down a lot of what we discuss in this episode in far more detail. Go to studentedge.org to sign up for free. As per usual, please DM me on Instagram, message Shil on LinkedIn, and let him know you came from this episode. I am sure he would love that. And if you want to get me a Christmas present, please leave a review of the podcast on Apple Podcasts. That would really mean a lot to me, and all the links to everything I do, as normal, are in the show notes below. Now, over to Shil. Shil, welcome so much to the podcast.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, thanks. Appreciate you coming on. We got introduced via Student Edge, who's a sponsor of this episode. I know that you are, you're doing some work with them with part of their course. So super excited, and thanks to them for introducing us. We just spoke off camera, not 100% sure where this podcast is going to go specifically, but you do specialize in public speaking, which is a skill that I'm very passionate about. Communication and public speaking. So before we get into all, some tips and tricks and why that's so important, I'd love to just know your story, what you did after high school.
What did I do after high school? I had no idea what I wanted to do after high school. I went to university. I went to a place in Perth called Curtin, and I always had a dream in my mind to become a marine biologist. And the reason I wanted to do that is because I'm fascinated by animals and the planet and the world and how everything comes together and the link with ecosystems. I can go on for hours about that. So after school, I felt I was always going to become a marine biologist. However, I went to Curtin. I did a business degree where I graduated with a double major in marketing and management. And I've never really used my degree, to be honest with you. I've always learnt through the failures I've had and through the embarrassing episodes I've had in my life. So that's my very short form immediately after school. And then I started to work. I got into a corporate career. I worked for 15 years, and then I started my own practice in public speaking.
Wow. And so why do you think that you chose that degree? Do you think it was pressure? Do you think you felt like you had to? Like you mentioned you haven't used it and probably wasn't what you really wanted to do. Why do you think that was?
There was never pressure. My parents always encouraged me to go to university, and they said it
Mm,
would be a good thing for me to do. So I've never felt pressured to do anything. However, because of the encouragement I had, I felt it was the right thing to do, and it was going to be a benefit to my future. And so I'm glad I went to university because it groomed me to be a professional. It taught me a lot about how to build relationships, how to study, how to focus, and how to commit on tasks and assignments. In saying that, I had a very difficult time in university and I struggled a lot through my communication issues. And I I say I didn't use or I haven't used my degree much because I feel what I studied and what I learned, I haven't applied the principles, i.e., the models and the books I read and all the assignments I
mm,
had to go through. I've never felt they've been applied completely to any of the roles I've had. Instead, I've I've learned as I went along. In fact, I remember my first job interview after I graduated from university was I thought I'm going to step in there with armed with my degree and I'll be able to spit out all the things I've learned in my degree. And it completely blew me away because there was nothing that they asked me which matched the degree I'd studied. And so
mm.
that was quite eye opening. I wasn't expecting that at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I hear this quite a bit, and this was a big part of this podcast. You said it the very first thing you said on this podcast was, "Well, I didn't know what I wanted to do," right? Because no one does. Of course, you're 18. How could you know what you want to do? So, yeah, that's super interesting. That your perspective, you felt like you needed to go, and of course, it wasn't a complete waste of time. You learned those certain skills out of it, and But I did like how you mentioned most of what you've learned has been through failures and trial and error because that's kind of the same as me and also the same as a lot of people that I, surround myself with.
I like to call it a flirting. It's a failed learning.
Right. Right.
So I like to always call it a flirting because I used to call it I in fact I that's the way I described it too. I used to call it a failure.
Mm,
And until I started to switch my mind into no, it's not a failure, it's an experience. It's something I
mm,
learned. It's an experience and it's a learning because it's something I learned from. It's a failure I've learned from. So it's a term that I've started to use a lot more often now because there's a negative connotation which comes with being a failure or having a failed experience, or there's a negative connotation that comes with that. And
mm.
I'm really interested in taking out the negative connotation and spinning it into a positive experience.
Well, that's what we talk about. Like the thing is, and when it comes to comfort zones, whenever you step out of your comfort zone, you have two choices. You can either push through or you can step back into it. And most people in life step back into it. And the thing is, when you push through, you're either going to fail or you're going to succeed. And whether you fail or succeed, you will have some level of growth. And so that's what you want to focus on, not the failure or the succeeding or whatever. Focus on the growth because, as you mentioned with learning, even when you fail, it's going to teach you a hell of a lot in the process.
Absolutely. And we as in the world, the population of the world in general, we are afraid to try. A lot of us are scared to step into something which we don't know.
Mm,
We're afraid to step into something which we don't have the answers for. I feel a lot of people are afraid to ask a difficult question, afraid to put your hand up in class and answer or ask a question, afraid to speak up, afraid to try. If we don't know the process to something, I'll give an example. Crypto.
mm,
It's a big topic at the moment, and one of my very good friends has heavily been getting into crypto in the last 12 months, and he's put the time and the research, and he's been doing a lot of really cool things in the crypto space. And he's been emailing information through to me saying, start here in real bite-sized chunks and a process with the right steps to follow. I'm still afraid to do it because I don't
mm.
know enough about it. And so that
Right.
even to read the information, to watch the videos and apply the process, I'm scared of doing it because it is completely new territory for me. I
Mm,
don't know. Whenever I'm booked to speak at an event, if it's the first time I'm speaking at that particular event, and if it's the first time I'm on that stage, I'm terrified, man, because
mm.
it's a new environment for me. Even though I've delivered the talk before, it's a new environment, and so I feel scared. And I think it's okay to be afraid. I think it's okay to feel the nerves and anxieties because we're human.
Yeah.
We're designed in this way. It's okay to feel this way. It's a primal instinct to feel this way. If we can learn to manage those emotions and not let them take control of us, we can do amazing things.
Yeah, and I mean, there's that quote: "The hero and the coward have the same fear, but the hero does it anyway." You know,
Yeah,
everyone has fears. Everyone has, like, especially public speaking. Like, I'm sure we'll get into that. The number one fear in the world, I think, for people, and it's something I've been doing a lot of over the past 12 months because I've, podcasting and I've been working with a program, and so yeah, it is scary. But man, when you come off stage and you crushed it, there's no better feeling. You push through it, and now you've got confidence. Every single time you do it, it gets easier and easier and easier. So by the time you've done it, 50 times, it's not even in your comfort zone anymore. Your comfort zone's expanded, so that's just kind of what you do.
actually, can I challenge that?
Yeah, yeah, please.
I'd like to challenge that. So there's a notion that the more you do it, the easier it becomes.
No,
And
yeah, right.
I don't know if I'm the only one who feels this way. In fact, I know I'm not the only one who feels this way. I feel the more you do it, the better you get,
Mm,
the more comfortable we feel. And because the better we get, the next time we get on stage, there's an expectation now that you will deliver to a certain level. In your world, you are a very successful person. Your podcast is doing amazingly well. And so every time you get behind your mic and you invite a guest on your show, there's an expectation that the show is going to be delivered and the conversation and the production value is going to be at a particular level.
mm,
And so every time you break into a new level, that puts, I feel, it's more pressure, it's expectation to be better, to be the best, to be excellent. And every time I get on stage now, even though I've done it hundreds of times, I feel pressure and fear every time because now I get on, I'm introduced, and I pinch myself and I think, wow, is that my introduction? Is that who I actually am? And then I get on stage and people think he's going to deliver the best talk I've ever heard. And that's
mm.
really scary. It's a lot of pressure to take on. You're right, though. Once it's done and you get off stage, it is incredible, unless you mess up, in which case it
Yes.
doesn't feel very good.
But even if you mess up, right? You now know not what to do. You've learned from that mistake, and you
Yes,
can move on. But I
yes,
agree. Maybe the wrong language is saying it gets easier because it never gets easier. It stays the same. It just has the illusion of being easier because you're better and you've improved. And I
yes.
think, and that's the whole growth and fixed mindset thing. It's like I'm not naturally a good public speaker. Not many people are, to be honest. It's a skill that you've got to develop over time. You mentioned earlier you have a stutter. You're a public speaking coach, and you had a stutter. And so I think that's an incredible story because it shows that you're able to push through something and get to the other side through hard work and dedication and pushing through that.
Well, nobody's born a speaker.
Mm,
No one. Even Obama, who's arguably one of the greatest presenters in the world, right?
mm,
Even Obama, it's a skill he has had to learn over time. It's a skill anybody can learn. The skill. What prevents us from learning it is the fear. And when something is so scary and so out of our comfort zone and puts us in a position where whether we're presenting to 2 or 20 or 200 or 2,000, it is as exposed and vulnerable and open to the elements as we will ever be.
mm.
Short of being there without your clothes on, and I don't. Please keep your clothes on, and please don't ever imagine the audience without their clothes on. That's a terrible thing to do.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
please keep your clothes on. It is as exposed as we will ever be, and so we feel afraid of judgment, of ego, of credibility, of what people might think about us. And
Mm.
now we're in an age where everybody's not everybody, the majority of people have a smartphone. Will somebody take a video of us, and will they put the video onto Instagram or Snapchat or onto Facebook or any of the millions of channels out there and make us look stupid if we do? So there's so
Mm.
many things that are going on which drive the fear factor.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's where we talk about the younger generation, how they've grown up in a world where, anything you do can be exactly as you said, can be put into the world. And so we keep it very sheltered, because what if we say the wrong thing? What if we do the wrong thing and someone's filming? What if we get too drunk at a party and something happens and now it's posted to everyone? And I think
Yeah.
it creates a very high level of anxiety for young people, because it's like you're
Yeah.
constantly being watched and it's only going to get worse.
Yeah. I agree. It's only going to get worse. I grew up at a time where we had no smartphones. We had no internet for a long
Mm,
time of my life. And then eventually Steve Jobs, when Steve Jobs introduced the Apple smartphone, the first smartphone, the world had no need for a smartphone. We were
mm,
happy with, for the younger generation who are listening to this, we used to have a Nokia, and it
mm.
was it was a brick, and we had this game called Snakes, and we
Yeah.
played Snakes on our Nokia. And I wore a belt, and I put my phone into my belt, and I
Yeah.
thought I
Yeah.
was the coolest person ever. I thought I was the coolest person, and I was happy with that. I had a
Mm,
Walkman, no, a Discman, my Nokia, my man bag, and I thought I was awesome.
mm,
And then Steve Jobs said, "What if I could put your music, your contacts, and your phone all into one?" And he presented us with a product which the world wasn't. We weren't prepared for it. We weren't aware of it, and that changed everything. And now everyone's got one.
mm.
Smartphones, iPads. We've got all these all technologies. In fact, my nephews and my nieces, my wife's got two nieces, I've got two nephews. We joke with them, you were born with an iPad in your hands.
They're pretty much they were, weren't they? Like you see
They
kids nowadays, and it's like the iPad is a pacifier. If parents are, it's so easy to just not look after your kid and just give them an iPad, and
they
it's like that's
teach
really
us,
worrying.
mate, they teach us about tech on
Yeah,
iPads.
yeah.
And then 2 weeks ago I was at a party, and one of the ladies I met, we were talking about her children. And there's a boy who goes to school with her son, who's now a sponsored gamer,
Mm,
and he spends his time playing games, and he gets sponsored and paid for playing games. And she
mm.
said it's extraordinary how we were always encouraging him to go outdoors and play sport. He dedicated time to video games, and now he's a sponsored gamer. It's
Yeah,
extraordinary.
well, esports is a massive, massive world, and it's only getting bigger as well. Like,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, I guess there are definitely benefits of sport regardless in terms of health, being out in the sun and stuff, but as you
Oh,
mentioned, it's becoming a very viable career pathway, video
yeah.
games, which is something that never would have existed 20,
No.
10. I mean, maybe 10, but like 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, no way. Video games have only been around for like what, 70, 80 years, if that.
Look, man, my idea of a video game is Street Fighter,
Mm,
Mortal Kombat, and Mario Kart,
yeah, all
where we
2D.
floated around with the tortoises and the turtles, and we pinged each other with the balloons. That's my idea of a video game. And so, to the younger generation who are watching, you might not have any idea about what I'm talking about, but those were the games to play. They were
Yeah.
fun.
And now we've got VR and the metaverse and everything that's happening, which is a whole new world. And you've got one right there. Is it the Oculus?
This is my Oculus headset. I've got three, because what I'm doing in the VR space is around speaking. So I can put this on myself or on you, and
Mm,
inside this headset, I built a platform where I put you onto a conference stage, I put you into a boardroom, I put you into people in front of people, where you are able to simulate what it's like to speak in public.
wow, that's amazing. How's that all going for you?
Yeah, really well, really well. We launched the product. We launched the idea, excuse me, in 2020. After the lockdown ended in Perth, it was June 2020. We took a risk and said we want to launch this to the market. And so
Mm,
it turns out we were the first live speaking event in the country after the lockdown. And We had a sold out audience. We streamed it to 18 countries around the world, and it's been a resounding success because we're the only ones in Perth who do this.
Wow. And so this is you basically, if you've got a fear of public speaking or you want to get over that fear, you can simulate a fake audience, so you can feel what it's like to be on stage, but not have the
Yeah.
pressure and
Yeah.
the pressure on you because they're not real people. And can you
Yeah.
simulate how many people and all that?
No, so we're not at that stage yet. The environments I have are I have a conference stage, and
Hmm.
in front of you would be an audience of around 200. I
Hmm.
have a meeting room where there's 12 people in the boardroom. I've got a networking environment. So the concept is after you've done your talk on stage, you go into a room and you start to network
Mm.
with a whole bunch of people. The room is full, and the last environment we have is a real life audience, which we've shot in 360-degree technology. Do you
Mm.
know what that is?
Yeah, like the GoPro 360.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah,
it
yeah,
shoots
yeah.
shoots 360 or every angle.
Yeah, so we shot a live audience in 360 and we uploaded that onto the headset. So that's as close to the real thing as we can get. And so
Mm.
where I'm up to at the moment is phase 3. We're now experimenting with phase 4, where we're starting to build in analytics for your heart rate, your pulse, your movement, your eye contact, your gestures. And the idea of this platform is we want to give people an opportunity to experience public speaking without being in front of an audience. So you can
Mm.
build your confidence through exposure therapy. Once your confidence is built, and you're more prepared than to be in front of a real life audience.
Absolutely. And, because as I mentioned, I've been doing a lot of public speaking this year before COVID, usually to audiences of about 50 to 100 young kids. And these are like, we're on stage for like 12 hours a day, doing different sections and stuff. And for me, like, I was terrified the first time I was going to go up there. I had no idea. I was like, I had prepared, I had my content down, but I was like, I could get up there and just forget everything. I don't know what's going to
Yeah,
happen. I had no
yeah,
PowerPoints. We don't use any PowerPoints. It had to be all off like a few dot points. It was like a
yes.
2 hour presentation. I was like, man, I struggle with a 10-minute presentation in school. How am I going to do 2 hours? But like with the strategies we use, and the audience wants you to win and stuff. But this is super exciting because I think it gives people immediate access, so they can, exactly that word you said before, exposure therapy. It's a great way to slowly dip their toes into the water and start getting a taste of what it's like, so that when they do jump onto the stage in the real life, it's not a massive shock to them, and they're a little bit used to it because they've been doing it virtually.
Well, here's the thing: we've both made a reference to being on stage because when we think of public speaking, that's what comes to mind.
Mm,
We're on stage. We're in front of 50 or 100 or 5,000 people. We're delivering a TED talk. We're speaking at a conference. Whereas public speaking is what we are doing now.
mm,
Public speaking is getting your phone and doing a video or recording a video and then uploading that onto LinkedIn or onto your Instagram. Every time we interact face to face with somebody in any form, it is in any on any platform or channel, it is a form of public speaking. And so what I've learned is when we can build the skill through presenting to an audience, we can transfer those to job interviews, to meetings, to classrooms,
mm.
to assignments, to projects, to podcasts, to going out to lunch with your mates, to having a difficult conversation, to, in my case, having a conversation with my wife and saying I'm right and she's wrong, which is normally not the case at all. She's always right. And it's such an interchangeable skill. And once you understand that it's an interchangeable skill, it's a game changer because
Oh,
most people think stage, speak to an audience, and that's the platform we've got. However, when you learn that, man, it transforms how you communicate anywhere.
yeah, and it's the same with me. Podcasting has changed my ability to communicate. I feel like, and especially because I edit all my podcasts, so I can see the mistakes I make on the video. And I'll be like, oh, I said a lot there. I kept interrupting there. Oh, maybe I should do this. I should tell more stories here. And I'm constantly trying to refine and improve. And that has been such a game changer for me. Whenever I meet someone, we actually teach a whole communication section at this program I mentioned, Empower You. And it's just, you're spot on. If you can, public speaking isn't just speaking on stage. it's overall communication skills, it's
Yes.
interviews when you're going for a job interview, it's when you meet someone at a networking event, it's whatever it is, right? You know, if you're speaking to someone on your phone, if you're delivering news, if you're talking to a doctor or something, that's all public speaking, and it can have massive impacts in your life if you can improve that skill.
Massive impacts on your life. And I feel, especially in the last 12 to 24 months, where excuse me, we won't talk about the C word. However, it's changed how we communicate. It's changed uh, so much of how we operate. There's so much more now done online. I
Mm,
found a lot of the work I was doing switched to networking because people were in lockdown for so long. Then all of a sudden they're out in the world again.
mm,
They're encouraged to network. They're encouraged to go back out and speak to people, and there's an anxiety which comes with that.
mm,
I do a lot of work with people around interviewing, job interviews. Once you're done with school, with high school, chances are you're going to have to interview. Once you're done with school, with university, you're probably going to have to sit in front of a panel and tell them why you are the ideal candidate for that job. And
mm.
there's a likelihood, the likelihood is there'll be 10 other people, 20 other people, 1,000 other people going for that same job. So how are you going to stay calm, composed, talk to everybody in that panel and tell stories that make you the most ideal candidate?
And do you know what the crazy thing is? If we're going back to that analogy or story, let's say there's 200 people that are going for this job. Let's say there's 100 people going. That's a lot of people, right? And there's a
Yeah,
few positions, right?
yeah,
You've all got to that stage where you're clearly qualified enough, you've got enough
yeah,
experience where they're willing to take you on a job interview. Now it comes down to how well you interview. And
yeah.
you could be less you could have be nowhere near as good as everyone else, but if you're good in the interview and you communicate you through stories and ideas, you're much more likely to get the job. And I know that seems unfair, but it's just the world that we live in.
Right. The art of communicating, the art of storytelling, understanding how we tick the right brain, the left brain, how we make the story applicable to the audience that we're talking to. That's just the that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's eye contact, there's your facial expressions, there's your hand gestures, there's smiling at a certain time, there's the pausing, there's the tilting of your head and smiling to project empathy. There
Mm,
are so many so many different elements to consider when we have a conversation or when we're in an interview. It's mind-blowing. It actually cripples your mind, and I talk about this in the storytelling and the presentations and the workshops I run and the conversations I have. And when I deliver the work I do, sometimes I'm told to stop because it cripples your mind. There's so much to understand that
mm.
unless you've been through the sort of challenges I have, or you've invested years into to learning, to researching and understanding it, it's impossible to remember everything.
Absolutely. And that's where I really love to talk about the fundamentals. You know, we talk about the three types of the three ways we communicate: words, body language, and tone of voice, right?
Yeah.
They're the three ways. And the crazy thing is, only 7% is words. And so I find whenever people are talking about communicating, they're like, what do I say? When I go to a job interview, what do I say? Byron, help me with what do I say? No. How do you say it with your body
Yes.
language and your tone of
Yes.
voice? And it's funny because we now live in a world of texting, not phone calls, really. Phone calls don't happen too much, mainly texting for young people where we don't get across any body language or any tone of voice. And that's where
Yes.
we try to use emojis to make up for that. But it's not the same, is
It's
it?
not the same. It's not the same. I delivered a new a new talk a month ago called "Lose Yourself," which is based on Eminem's song.
Right.
Right now, Eminem released this in 2002, and if you listen to the introduction of the song, his palms are sweaty, his knees go weak, his arms are ready. He feels like he wants to throw up his mom's spaghetti, even though on the surface he looks calm and ready to drop bombs, but he keeps on forgetting what he wrote down.
Mm.
When you think about that, that's how we feel when we are about to present, when we're about to speak. And I've been toying with my mind. How can I design a talk around this song? What can I do? So I designed a talk called Lose Yourself, where it's a story about how it's super important to focus on your body language, because when we're in an interview or we're networking or we're on a podcast or we're public speaking in its traditional form, when we panic, we lose ourselves. When we lose ourselves, we forget about what we need to do to effectively communicate through gestures, through eye contact, through posture, through demeanor. And it's not just what we say, it's how we say what we want to say. And so it's a story about how important it is to focus on our nonverbal communication, because let's this as an example now. I could have started our conversation like this. Hey man, it's good to see you. Or I could have started our conversation like this. Hey man, it's good to see you.
To clarify for the listeners, the first one he put his thumbs up, and the second one he gave me the finger.
I said exactly the same thing. However, the change in my body language
Yeah.
makes a complete difference. It's a simple and obvious example. Or I can sit like this throughout our conversation and talk to you.
Yeah.
Or I can sit like this and talk to you with my arms out while I gesture. It completely changes how we communicate.
The point is that words is a small amount. And it's exactly as you say, if your arms are crossed and you're hunched over, then you're probably going to be a bit more like closed off and you're a bit more serious. Whereas if you're open and your body's open, then people are far more likely to be more comfortable to talk to you. And something we talk about when it comes to communicating with someone is you want to try and match whatever their energy is. And so if they're a really calm person, then you don't want to go in really high energy because it's going to be quite uncomfortable to them. So if you're in a job interview and they're like, hey, how are you going? You'd be like, hey, yeah, I'm good, thanks. And try and match their tone of voice and try find common interests, tell stories to get your point across. Smile. Don't underestimate the power of a smile. Again, body language, show that you're passionate about wanting the job through your tone of voice. And, passion is obviously, I think we all know what passion is. You can just see it when people are like excited by it.
Don't ever underestimate the simple things, the power of a smile, the power of keeping your arms out, even dressing appropriately.
Yes.
Wearing the right clothes, making sure that your pants and your top or your skirt is ironed, or you don't look like you've just rolled out of bed, because the first impressions are crucial. They're crucial. And I don't want this to sound like a shallow thing to say. However, when you meet somebody for the first time, from the moment you shake their hands, we start to form opinions about you, from how tight your handshake is to what the grip is like. So yesterday I had a meeting with a potential client and we met at a cafe in Perth. I reached out to shake this person's hand and they grabbed the tip of my fingers like this with the tip of their hands, and the handshake was, I'm not sure if the video is going to be shown or if it's just an audio. However, it was this awkward, weird grip shake with the tip of their fingers, and instantly I thought, ugh. Ew. Come on, is this? And sadly, that set the tone for the rest of our conversation. And from that point on, I really felt this person was anxious. They were subservient. They were very closed off and didn't want to be expressive and confident in who they were. That might not have been the case. However, it's how I felt throughout because of that handshake.
Well, I think it's like your logical brain can go, I'm sure this person's great. It was just a weird handshake. But your emotional side of your brain goes, whoa, that was really weird. This person's a bit odd. They're not as confident. And that's, I think I saw something like, we make an opinion in the first 7 seconds of meeting someone.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a lot of that is subconscious. It's not you shaking the hand going, oh, this guy's an idiot. This person's stupid. It's all subconscious. You going, exactly, from the grip, the way they hand it, their confidence, if they're open with their body language, if they're closed, are they nervous, etc. That all goes a really, really big way when it comes to communicating.
Yeah. And we compute these things fast. The human brain works fast. And I know I've been judged. You may have judged me from the moment we started this call today because my microphone was off.
True.
Shit! I hope you didn't judge me. You may be judging me for my black shirt or my little plant in the corner there, or on my side, which you can't see. I've got a stack of my books here. So there's a whole bunch of things that I know when I meet people. The suit I wear, or my sneakers, or my chinos, or my jeans, or anything. I've been in a situation where I was introduced to somebody, and I didn't apply all my controls to manage my fluency, to manage my stuttering. I forgot and I stuttered badly and I couldn't get my name out. And you could feel instantly with this
Mm,
entire group, they felt sorry for me, they were confused, they didn't know how to respond, and the connection was broken.
mm.
Straight away the connection was broken. So I had to say, please excuse me, I need to use the bathroom, and I walked away because
Wow.
instantly there was a judgment on who is this person, why can't he even say his name. And it sucked. It really sucked. They weren't to know though.
Mm. And that's the whole thing, isn't it? Like they're probably thinking, oh, this guy's an idiot. Is there something wrong with him? And it's like you've just got to stutter. It's not a big deal in the big scheme of things, but that stuff happens, and they make an opinion. Again, it could be consciously, it could be subconsciously. We're not saying they're bad people, but this is happening in the subconscious mind, and that's where everything you said before, even down to how you dress. Like for a job interview, you want to make sure you're wearing the right clothes. If you're going to be working at a casual cafe, hipster cafe, then go in casual outfit that matches that. If you're going to be working in a law firm, then you probably want to dress up. And there's a story. My mentor Brent, who he said when he was younger, him and his mate, and they had an interview for a program they were working on, and they're like, "Let's go into full suits." And so they rocked up in full suits. They were a bit nervous because like this is overkill. But then do you know what the first thing the guy on the radio host said? He said, "I'm with two handsome young gents here. They've dressed up. They're looking very professional." That was the very first thing he said on live radio to everyone because of how they dressed up, and they're memorable. And so just all the little things add up.
I always feel if you're not sure, dress up.
Mm,
If you're not sure, dress up. Make the effort to dress up because you would rather be dressed up and have the ability then to take your tie off or to loosen your button or to dress
yes.
down than you would to dress up. And that first impression is important. And do you know what, man? I over the years I've really struggled with that because my so before I became a professional speaker, I worked in the construction industry. I wasn't a builder. I was what's called a BDM. So I would go out and source projects. And the environment was very much suit and tie. Had to wear a suit all the time. And so I got shaped into this culture, into this way of thinking that I have to always be in a suit.
Mm,
And sometimes it wasn't appropriate. And when I left the industry to then reform my identity as a speaker, I wanted to feel more comfortable in my skin by wearing sneakers and jeans or a shirt like this where I've left the button open. I wanted to be comfortable in myself. And it was really hard because for so long I was, for lack of a better word, brainwashed into thinking you have to wear a suit all the
mm,
time. Even on hot days, you have to wear a suit. And I really struggled with that. And I struggled to shed that identity of being a corporate suit the whole time into being a more chilled out guy who I'm anxious, I stutter, I make mistakes. I'm human. If you don't like me, don't hang out with me.
mm. And I mean, that's authenticity, right? Because it means when you're authentic with someone, I immediately trust you more because you've shown a vulnerable side. You told me before this, I've got a stutter, and I respect that. That made me feel closer to you. I should introduce you to her, but I had her on the show. She's a good friend of mine. Annalise, she's a public speaking coach for women, and she helps with their confidence.
I know,
And
Annalise.
oh, you know Annalise, yeah. So her story is great. Exact same thing. When she got her photos taken when she started the business, she was wearing suits, looking all professional because she was young and she wanted to make sure people respected her in the industry. And then over like a year or 18 months, she's kind of gone, you know what, that's not who I was at all. That's not who I am at all. She got new photos taken. They're lighthearted. She's laughing, smiling, wearing different colors, and they look so good and they represent her so much better.
Man, a shout out to Annalise. I think what she's doing is terrific. I think she's brave, she's courageous. I think her her philosophy, her content, the way she presents herself, I'm a fan of her work. We've spoken a few times. In fact, I'm pretty sure I was meant to get back to her with a live Instagram live date. So I'm sorry I haven't, Annalise. If you listen to this, I will.
She'll
I
listen for
will.
sure.
And
She listens.
I'm a fan. I'm a fan of her work, and I think that she's a really cool person.
Absolutely. And I mean, she said very similar stuff that you were saying on her episode about how you dress and all this sort of stuff. So it's not groundbreaking information, but it's information we need to be taking into and putting effort into. It's
Yeah,
as I mentioned before, if you're going for a job interview, focus less on what you're going to say. Come up with a few stories that you've got in your bank. I have like 100 stories in my head bank that I can pull out for different conversations and stuff. But that's because I'm a podcaster. But get a few stories and dress well, have confidence, give a firm handshake, remember the name of people, all that sort of stuff. It goes a long way when it comes to public speaking, communicating, and building rapport with people.
yeah. Which is human connection. When we
Mm.
connect with somebody, we're more likely to trust them. When we connect with somebody, we're more likely to respect them. We're more likely to listen to them. We're more likely to do business with them. We're more likely to be their friend, and that comes with a human connection.
Mm. Exactly. I mean, and especially, isn't that what we're craving now more than ever after COVID? I
Yeah,
said the T word there, but in Sydney, we've just had like 120 days of lockdown. We've been out of it for like a few weeks now, but my God, such a little human connection. And it is so important. If anything, it made me realize how important it is because I didn't have it for so long.
yeah. We on the West Coast have been feeling it for you on the East Coast. We've really been feeling it for you on the East Coast because we've been a normal state for a very long time,
Mm,
and you might have heard it all over the news. We've been in isolation ourselves in our little community, in our little bubble here, and we're thriving, absolutely thriving. In fact, I heard our premier at a conference about a month ago, and he brought up this chart. And on this chart, he spoke about the strongest performing countries in the world, the strongest performing e- e- economies in the world. And
mm.
China was the strongest economy. The second strongest performing economy was West Australia,
In the
not
world.
Australia, West Australia. And,
Wow.
he, and then he makes a joke about that and says, maybe we should become our own country.
Honestly, you probably could. I mean, how big are we? You're like a 7-hour flight away from me, and we're in the same country.
It's massive. It's massive. However, I do feel, and I'm going to drop in a very taboo comment here, as well as Australia is doing, and as strong as our whole country has been performing for a long time, this is how my mind tends to go off script. Not script, but I tend to deviate every now and then. We need to do more about climate change.
Oh,
We need to do
absolutely.
more about climate change. We, as
Oh,
a
look.
country, as a people, as a planet, we all need to do more. So please, if anybody can make little changes around how the the water that we use or the foods that we eat, or and I don't want to go on a big spiel about this. This is all I'll say. Please consider the planet, and if there's little changes that you can make, it means the world.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
literally
look.
means the world because we are a rare planet in the universe. We're a little gem in the universe, and if we don't protect this little gem, we're done.
Mm. And look, I agree. I mean, I think Australia is a phenomenal country. Even despite what's been going on over the past year, I think it's an incredible country. But we do need to up our climate change game. It's embarrassing. And yeah, so I mean, again, I'll probably do separate episodes on that as well. There's a little tangent there. So, but look, Shil, thank you so much for coming on the show. Before we wrap up, I ask every guest one final question, and it's a big one. So feel free to take your time. But what would your number one piece of advice be to the younger generation, like an 18-year-old?
What would my number one piece of advice be to the younger generation, to an 18-year-old?
Mm,
Think big, try. I feel, speaking from my own experiences, I was always afraid to try. Speak up. If you feel something, if you think something, say it. If you feel something, for somebody else as a way to support that other person, say it, speak up, because they might not have the courage to do so. If you have the courage to speak up for others, your voice can be amplified to
Mm.
millions of people, and that can change the world. It can literally change the world. So think big, speak up, ask questions, ask a lot of questions, because there's no such thing as a silly question. And don't be afraid to make a mistake. I think a lot of the younger generation are afraid to make a mistake, and we worry about the repercussions of that. All mistakes can be fixed. And as a parting comment, I'll say this. If you feel you have a challenge, if you feel you're anxious, or you have a lisp or a stutter, or you might not like the way you look or sound, or whatever it is, find what your superpower is. Every single human on this earth has a superpower. And once we understand what ours is, and we find time to nurture it and embrace it, and that means accepting ourselves for who we are, because when we accept ourselves for who we are, others will want to listen to what we have to say. And when you can find your challenge and develop it into a superpower, it's transformational, and it'll change the way you see the world.
Mm. Yeah, wow, that's amazing advice, and I love the superpower thing, because I honestly, I genuinely believe that. I genuinely believe that as well. I think everyone has an unbelievable talent inside of them. I think most people don't believe they do and can't see it themselves, and so if you can see it in someone, help pull it out. I've done that with my friends. I'm like, I can see you've got this in you. You need to do this. Whatever it is. And I think that was what you said before about amplifying your voice and speaking up. So, great
Look,
advice. I love that so much.
I'll give an example of that just to close off, please.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Approximately, so no, I'll start again. When I was going through my transformation from my old career to being a public speaker, I invested a lot of time into discovering who I am. And I invested a lot of time into understanding how to manage and control my fluency. While I was going through this transformation, I learned that approximately 3% of the world's population stutters. 3%. And when I learned that, I thought to myself, if you sit in the 3% of any category, you sit in elite company,
Mm.
because you think differently, you're wired differently, you see the world through a different lens. And so don't ever feel, if you have a unique ability, that it's a disability, or if you have anything which is being of a challenge to you, it's going to be a unique challenge that's only affecting a percentage of the world's population. And so try and flip the way you think about it, and instead of
Mm.
feeling sorry and bad about whatever it is, see it as being elite, or find a way to flip your thinking to see it as being your own little superpower.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Shil, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You speak so well. I'm super excited to share this episode and cut it up. So again, a shout out to Student Edge for connecting us. If anyone's enjoyed
Yeah.
this episode, I know you do some stuff with you've done like a little, I guess you've broken down what you've kind of spoken about in this episode in a lot more detail. If anyone wants to find out more.
Yeah, if anybody would like to find out more, Student Edge, we've formed a partnership, and there's a course which I have developed for them. Feel free to connect with me on my LinkedIn, my Instagram.
Mm.
I'm really trying to build up my Instagram. I've
Okay.
been told I need to get more Instagram savvy. So please follow me on Instagram if you don't already do so.
Yep. So guys, go follow him on Instagram. I'll put all the links below. Make sure you message him if you enjoy this episode as well. But otherwise, Shil, thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.